Those are the big ones. I think actually the scenario choosing survey is actually going to close on January 19th because we've got to have a few weeks to process the results that we get. The what we're calling the survey will probably actually be like an online open house that people can visit and watch videos and learn information while also like using like a participatory method that's very survey like. Um, and we're working on that right now. We'll do some presentation on that to you today, I think, as well. And we're also beta testing it in the community and with staff. So we are in the development of our process phase, and it's really interesting to see what's coming out of the modeling work and how we're going to pull this together. The timing of it being over the holidays means that the word of mouth advertising is going to be very important because if people are just tuning out ads and commercial things and postcards, everybody's kind of overwhelmed with that. So we're hoping groups like the tag, the committee, and the ambassadors will be able to help keep the word of mouth going while we kind of do a winter stretch of public engagement. So that's all I'd add.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah. Any questions so far about that? You can feel free to raise your hand or put your thoughts in the chat. Also, just on that note, if you know, and we can kind of revisit this at the end of the meeting, but if there are other kinds of opportunities where you think this activity could be facilitated, that would be good to know too. Okay, so yeah, let's move on. So we just talked about kind of the big timeline arc of when this will be happening. Now this is showing you kind of what the actual activity is. And like Sarah said, we're in the process of creating an online open house with the help of the city and county to host that. And that will be a way that we can both marry kind of the context and information about the scenario planning process, kind of what the scenarios are, as well as the actual survey quiz itself, so that people can kind of have that parallel experience, whether they engage with this process virtually or in any of like an in-person workshops that happen. So this is kind of what that experience we're suggesting would look like, is that there'd be, at least one, if not a set of short, concise videos that first being kind of an introduction video that explains the project and purpose of the regional plan. And then 3 additional videos that could kind of break down first, what the actual regional plan scenarios are, and kind of how they were derived, what each of the scenarios are kind of emphasizing and how they are responding to critical uncertainties, what their kind of distinctive strategies are, and then a third video that kind of previews what this scenario choosing survey, what they can expect with this scenario choosing survey. So they're something that would be not more than a minute long. But we're trying to balance providing too much information that might kind of cause people to kind of like throw up their hands and drop off before they even get started with, which we don't want, but we want to give people the right amount of information so that they feel like they're understanding the content and can kind of respond with a more informed perspective. So in the online open house format, at least one video or a set of videos would be shown first. Then people would be pushed to this scenario choosing survey, which is what we will all, which is what you will all preview today and provide feedback on. The survey is actually developed in a way that provides you with kind of a feedback loop. So you are asked about your priorities across a set of different kind of areas. And based on your responses, you get some feedback on how closely your priorities matched with along the 4 distinctive scenarios. So that's the kind of maybe difference in this type of survey or quiz really than a typical survey where it's just kind of a one-directional thing. The part that we are still developing and would be part of the open house is the scenario report cards. And this is kind of the important information about how people, or I'm sorry, not how people, how the scenarios actually perform. So you get your feedback on how closely your priorities match with the scenario, then you learn kind of how these scenarios perform and maybe resolve, what you maybe thought with what you want to see. And then ultimately what we want are for people to select their preferred scenario, which is that last box. I feel like my explanation makes it more complicated than what it really is, but the good news is that you'll actually be testing the survey right now, so you'll have a little bit more context that we can kind of use as far as our discussion that happens for the second half of the meeting. All right, I see Michelle. You have your hand raised?
Yes, I wanted to ask, can you explain what the scenario is telling us again?
Sorry.
Or I didn't quite understand it.
Sorry, do you mind saying your question one more time?
Can you tell me more about the third there, what the scenarios are telling us? How is that going to work?
Yeah, so the context scenario report cards box. Yeah, right. So this is kind of like, so the first part of, or the survey itself is just focusing on presenting you with different questions with different options that you will select kind of what is most important to you. So it's really based on your priorities, values, what you want to see as the individual respondent. Based on what your input is, you will get results at the end of that survey of like how closely your priorities match with a particular scenario. But the next part that the scenario report cards piece that you're just asking about will then present you with, okay, so these are your priorities, but this is how the scenarios might perform as in regards to kind of like climate impacts or infrastructure funding required or mobility. And survey respondents will be kind of presented with that information and we'll need to kind of resolve, okay, well, how do, maybe I might have matched closest with scenario D. However, I really like the performance or the information and the strategies that are kind of emphasized in scenario C. So that at that point in the online open house is when a participant will kind of get that information before ultimately being asked to provide their preferred scenario. Did that help? Sorry, Michelle, I think I didn't catch if that was addressed your question. Michelle, did that help? You can give like a thumbs. Okay, cool. Thank you.
And just a little more to add to that, maybe in this dashed red box that we have called scenario choosing context on the left, these are suggested materials that we're kind of suggesting or we're considering including in some kind of, so we're thinking that we are going to administer this survey via a link through some kind of online open house platform, which Ayano mentioned. And what that does is allows us to provide a little more contextual, kind of variety of media if we think that's useful for people. So right now we have the survey, which you're about to take, and hopefully this will all make a lot more sense once you've taken the survey too. We might be like actually putting the cart before the horse a little by telling you all this. But we're setting this up so that when you take the survey, you can think about what kind of educational material, explanatory material do I think the public needs to know to be able to take this survey, understand why they're taking it, understand how the information is being used, and make a good decision about which scenario they like the best. And so these boxes that we have inside this dashed red box here, so the introduction, the regional plan scenarios, what are scenarios telling us, and the scenario choosing survey preview are all material items that we're suggesting we could include in the online open house that people could view or read before they take the survey to understand a little bit more about what the survey is and the content that they're going to encounter in the survey. We're not necessarily suggesting we do all this, and we've even heard from Sarah's staff and some community that this may be too much. And so we're really curious to hear that from you all as well. But we also have heard from people that they want enough information to, understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how to make a good decision in this tool to provide public feedback. So that's what these boxes in the scenario choosing context section are. They're just suggestions right now. I think the intro, we will probably have a video. I think that one we're pretty set on having, but these other three pieces, could be overkill. So that's one thing we're interested in hearing from you on is what kind of context do we need for people before they take the survey?
Great. Okay, thanks for emphasizing that. All right, so I'm going to just put the survey test link in the chat. And what I'd like is we actually would like you to take the next 10 minutes to pivot your attention to the survey test link. And while you're going through it, we have a few questions that we'd like you to just kind of keep in mind so that we can get your feedback on. First off, overall, what's your big picture thoughts or impressions in this approach? Keep in mind that this survey, what we just sent, is just the segment that's asking about your priorities. Okay, so it's not presenting, the scenario report cards or anything like that. It kind of comes right up to that line. Like Sachi was just sharing, we want to know if there's maybe more or less context information that might be helpful in developing around this survey, so people have more information to make informed opinions or input. And then if there's anything that stands out to you while you're taking this survey that you like, you don't like, you have some constructive feedback on. So let's regroup at let's see, are we on the same time zone right now? 11:35. Yeah. So 11:35, we will ring the bell to come back, and then we can talk about what your impressions are. And if you have any questions, of course, chime in or let me know. Let us know if we can help troubleshoot.
Hi, y'all. This is Kim. I'm just curious, will this jot form be available in Spanish as well?
Yeah, Sarah, that is the plan, right? Oh, I see you. Please chime in.
Yes, Kim, we are going to get all of the materials translated into Spanish. And we are going to have, one of the dates that's not final that I didn't get to put up on the screen is that, NAIC is going to partner with us to offer a Spanish language workshop that will be available for folks that want to participate in a Spanish speaking environment. And we'll have our translator there to translate for the non-Spanish speakers like me what the content of that meeting is. So yeah, everything will be in Spanish, just like it was with the Face the Future workshops.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. So hopefully you've had a chance to go through the survey and even maybe have taken a stretch break or something, water break. Before we get into the discussion, I want to try something new with everybody, and this only will work if everybody participates. So I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1, and I want everyone to unmute themselves and in one word, summarize your impression of what you thought, how you thought of this survey. So y'all just unmute yourself right now, and then I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, and just yell out your impression of the survey, okay? Because then we can get a sense of where we're starting from. And this is also something that not every meeting you get to unmute yourself and just yell into the Zoom space. So I feel like I would really encourage you to take advantage of this. So far, I feel like Tyler and Paul are the only people who are joining me in this effort. Don't be afraid. Unmute.
A bit confusing.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to say 3, 2, 1 and just yell your impression in one word of the survey. 3, 2, 1.
Confusing.
Clear as mud. Thank you. Okay, good. Good. The good news is that wasn't a real data collection question. It just was something to wake us all up. All right. So Julie, I saw your comment here. The trade-offs are tough. Yeah, let's talk. I want to talk about that. That's something that's already come up about kind of how we've even framed the trade-offs to begin with, and that they're not necessarily like always the dichotomy we would think. But yeah, let's start though, like big picture. And let's maybe do it just by raising your hand first, or you can put into the chat. What are your first impressions of this survey?
I like that it's plain language.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Yeah,
This
I think
is
there's room
Sonia.
for improvement, but I'm glad that that's how you feel. Yeah.
I have a comment on, I think kind of the layout of it is not super intuitive, like that the arrow is how you go back. And it's an up arrow. It took me a minute, and I've taken quite a few surveys. I think out to the general public, it might be a little confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how it looks on a phone too, because I bet a lot of people are going to take them on a phone versus a desktop or a laptop like I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, point well taken. There's some limitations with the platform we're using, but I think that we can play around with what's available to make it maybe more streamlined.
That if I can, I was taking it on my phone, and I like that all of the responses were on one page. So on my phone, it was easy to see. Everything was together. The arrows at the bottom left appeared on the bottom left of my screen. I didn't know what the arrows were for until I just started messing with them because I wanted to go to the previous screen. So it looks very streamlined on my phone, and it took a couple of tries to figure out on the screen how to select an answer. So I was actually trying to swipe on my phone, and then I said, "Oh, let me just push." That took about 2 seconds, but I figured it out. So it appears very prettily on the phone screen.
Okay, but it's good that there's that's like that is coming up. That's good feedback on kind of the user interface and seeing what adjustments we can make to that. Tyler, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I thought the format was interesting. One criticism is that I think across a lot of the questions, there could be a clearer framing of the trade-offs. I mean, since I'm familiar with the development of this and I've been in all these meetings, I've got a good grasp of what the trade-offs are in terms of cost and other priorities for the different options. But I don't think a lot of people taking the survey will be fully aware of those trade-offs, so that they could be framed up a bit clearer.
Mm-hmm. So, and it looks like, yeah, so you have a couple folks who are kind of echoing that. I'm wondering, because kind of another question we have is like the level of kind of context and information that we might need to add. Is that something that you think is more appropriate to do kind of while you're in the middle of the survey versus like having one of these videos before you start that survey? Any thoughts on that, or kind of what level of information do you feel like would be?
I don't think it necessarily needs to be detailed information. I can give an example for one that I feel familiar with. The questions, priority 3 was asking about housing. And you're sort of picking between different development types. Like for example, on the large lot single family home example, it might indicate this is a more expensive option, so it does the least for housing affordability, but also it's the one that maintains the most a suburban neighborhood character. Just like a very simple, that's the trade-off with this option, not necessarily detailed with numbers.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about the keeping housing affordable trade-off question?
Yeah, the one you were just looking at.
Oh, this one. Okay, the one with the just which type of housing is a top priority. Okay.
Yeah, just as an example.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's good. Thank you for that. That's good feedback. All right, I'm checking this. Yeah, so Michelle, can the survey explain that the trade-offs are not necessarily either or? For instance, climate goals trade-offs don't indicate that we could have short walking and biking as well as invest in transit. Yeah, Michelle, I think that the climate, like in general, these climate questions, or I'm sorry, the trade-off questions and the climate goal one in particular has come up as one is that, there are more than just these two aspects of meeting climate goals. And I'm curious to hear, if this group feels like that needs to be expanded a bit more, or if you think that this kind of way of presenting a trade-off that relates to the climate goals is most relevant. Or just
I need to preview those specific slides again. I mean, there were a lot of questions. I tried to remember everything, but I can't say that I remembered every single question.
Yeah,
I did notice that the transit was TBD. Yeah, that one's a little tricky because it's it's Mountain Line and they have their own process and they're doing their own surveys related to transit. But I suppose it's important to have transit in these questions. Anyway, thanks for going back to those specific slides.
Yeah, and I should clarify right now, any of the, so this is a discussion draft version. So that TBD that you might see across some of the response options is actually a marker for us that we need to kind of confirm with the transportation modeling that this would be an appropriate characterization for like scenario C, which is what we've attributed that kind of option to. On the related note, all of the question options right now have the scenario that they're like most aligned with in parentheses. That's something that we would remove in the final version of this survey, but just for now, so that we can quickly kind of keep track of everything, we have them attached to the response answers, to the response options. Okay, Stephanie, I see your comment. I think people will see the available answers and disagree with all of them and therefore not want to select one. Should there be a NA option, or should there be more of a prompt that you have to select one to align with one of the scenarios? Yeah, right. So there's always folks who just don't want to play along and have good reasons of their own for that. The way the survey has been designed is that, there needs to, completing these questions, all of these questions have a point value, have the options assigned to a point value to, so that at the end it totals to see how closely you match across all scenarios. So allowing like an NA option would potentially leave like a scoreless kind of result. So I think your suggestion about, you need to select at least one to move forward is probably the way we would need to go.
Yeah, thank you. Just using this as an example, I could see a situation where someone's looking at these two selections and thinking, no, I think the city needs to prioritize in renewable energy, like that's not a listed option. And so, and I did play around in the survey and try and skip questions, and it doesn't let you. And so I could see people perhaps getting frustrated and just not even finishing it.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
To address that.
Yeah. And of course, that's something that we've been thinking about too, and that what's not actually, there's only one open end option in this current version of the survey. So one idea that's come up is, especially for like this question, if you're not seeing something that's reflected, that can there be a way of inserting or adding another question that's like, what are some strategies for meeting climate goals that weren't listed that you'd like to prioritize? So I think that can be an option too, to help maybe be a little more responsive to that situation. Okay. I'm just kind of scanning here for climate trade-offs. Why not compare the scenario options of keeping VMT at today's level or reducing VMT? And then some trade-offs directly related to what individual selects to the question. This directly relates to the CNP. Yeah, so I think right now we are generating kind of what those like indicators are. I think some of what you're bringing up, Michelle, might be actually what we would kind of showcase when we're showing how scenarios perform, and then letting people select, understand that like certain scenarios have higher VMT than others. How does that kind of resolve with maybe what your priorities are? Because I think overall, we would assume that people would want to, reduce or maintain VMT rather than increase it. And so sharing that or like bringing that up as more of like a comparison across scenarios might be when we can like, I don't know, bring that up a little bit more with more context. Okay, thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for joining. Other feedback or comments that hasn't already been brought up or that people want to elaborate on that I might have missed in the comments?
I have one question. Just the letters in parentheses versus the letters in squares, is that meaningful to the survey taker, or is it temporary in your development of the question?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, so those are temporary. The letters in the parentheses are just for the purposes of this prototype to show that that option is has points that will score towards scenario B or scenario C in the example slide that Sachi was just showing. We will remove those in the final version because it's confusing with the other letters that are right there.
Yeah. Another question I had, I think I heard you say, I don't know if this is quite a possibility or if I understood what you were suggesting, but as I was going through this survey, there would be things that I could imagine someone might not understand. And if there was an option of clicking a little pop-up with a little more information that would explain what that question means or what that option means, is that a possibility?
Yeah, this platform doesn't have that kind of pop-up window option, unfortunately, but the alternative would be adding in, intermittently adding in sections within this survey that just are about, at that educational piece or clarifying what do we mean when we're saying VMT or, any other kind of more jargony thing. But yeah, that's good. That's a good suggestion. Are there any other comments about specific questions that people have comments about or like feel like they want to have ideas about fine tuning? Yeah, Tyler.
I do have a question specifically about the very first question, which was asking you to rate your priorities. Option G felt a little strange to me because that's more like a specific policy. And then you actually kind of get the option to pick that policy later on in one of the questions. It feels more like that should be rephrased as what priority would that policy serve? It feels like that ties into, I feel like choosing that type of development is most often brought up in the context of I want to preserve a suburban neighborhood character, or I want to preserve the existing neighborhood character. So maybe some wording about that instead of specifically this policy in order to achieve that priority.
That's a great note. Yeah, agreed. That's the kind of feedback we're looking for. We need the collective wisdom of this group. Okay, catching up here. And also feel free if you are able to just unmute and if you want to kind of spotlight anything you're putting in you've already put in the chat so I can catch up. Okay.
And maybe while you're reading the chat, Ayano, I can just jump in here quickly. So a couple things as we're nearing the end of this meeting, just as a reminder. and we'll get to this, I'll mention this again in next steps in a few minutes, but just so you know and can look forward to this, we're going to share this slide deck with all of the survey questions on it in this form that I have here, so you can flip through them again. We're going to share this as a PDF. And we'll give you a couple days with this. If you'd like to make more comments on it via email or commenting on the PDF, you can do that. So you'll have a little more time to kind of process. I know some of us need that process time, and it's not always easy to give really insightful feedback right after you've just looked at something. So we will have that opportunity. And then also just want to remind everyone that we have one more 1-hour meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. To discuss the report cards, which I think are an important contextual piece. Some of the things we're talking about, like VMT and thinking about the trade-offs of the different scenarios for things like VMT or mode split, how many people are driving in each scenario versus walking or taking transit. Those are things that can come out a little more in the scenario report cards, which you get, and this is just a placeholder. We're gonna actually have report cards here for each scenario, and the scenario that you match with, you'll get to see the report card for, but you'll also get to look at all of the different scenarios and compare their report cards. So it's another way to think about trade-offs beyond just being asked, like, do you prefer infrastructure improvements in areas where new growth might occur or in existing neighborhoods? Like, yes, that's an important thing to know in terms of priority, but then we can also look at how do the scenarios actually perform, and people can make the ultimate decision that they're going to make about which alternatives or which scenario in general that they're going to sort of vote for, based also on these report cards. And the report cards and the metrics that we're going to report are what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So in particular, I think those of you who are interested in the VMT conversation, we'll be talking more about that and looking at that more when we talk about report cards.
Tyler, was there something else you wanted to add, or was that from earlier, your hand?
No, that was from earlier, sorry.
Oh, no worries. Just don't want your arm to get tired being raised. Okay. Anything else before we leave that just want to share first impressions? And again, yeah, you'll have some time to digest and share your feedback offline after this for the remainder of the week. But yeah.
Did we talk about this comment from Julie that setting the stage for the survey, it'd be helpful to have an overview of the scenarios with a graphic?
We did not talk about it, but I did read it and I agree. I think that would be really helpful. Julie, was there more you wanted to add about that?
Nope, that's it.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I was gonna say, and then I added the take it again option at the very end, because it's like, oh, that was actually not the scenario I necessarily aligned with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of curious if I go back and take it again or look at specific questions to see how it might change the outcome. So that's going to be an option.
Yeah. Have you ever wanted to take a survey again, or is this a new experience for you?
This is a new experience for me, probably because the trade-offs were really hard, which I think is important, because I don't think we can have everything that we want. I think that's been the rub for so long, is that that we have 30 top priorities, and it makes it very difficult to focus on 5 of them. So, pushing where you have to make this choice about which one is more important to you is hard. And it's like, well, maybe that wasn't the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
So one piece I want to point out in this flow chart that we didn't actually pilot test with you today was, once you've taken the survey and seen the report card for your scenario, we're thinking that the next piece in the online open house platform would be to, or in the survey itself, we're not quite sure yet, would be to actually vote on a preferred scenario. So that would be an opportunity to, you know, like we've sort of told you based on your preferences what scenario we think you might like or might be inclined to like. But then we also are thinking, after letting you then view the scenario results, the report cards, that we could have an opportunity for you to just directly vote on a preferred scenario. So Julie, I don't know if that maybe gets at what you're thinking, like, you know, this desire to like, I want to take the survey over because I want to actually like choose a different scenario, even though maybe my preferences seemed like this, I actually really care about this thing that this other scenario, you know, performs better in. And so I actually changed my mind. Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah, so that's great. And thanks for kind of demonstrating what that experience we were hoping to for people to go through. I also agree, Steve, it would be good to be consistent throughout the survey with imagery. That's something too that we didn't actually touch on too much today, but we want, I'm a big proponent of visual communication and using that to help underline or clarify anything when we're talking about surveys or you know, concepts that are a little bit more abstract. So the examples for the vision for Flagstaff's future, those would be curious to hear if those kind of sketches of you know, possible futures rubbed anybody the wrong way, or people have any kind of caution or support for doing something like this, more of this. But yeah, we want to, I think that is an improvement we can make, is once we settle in on our final set of questions, then we can improve them with better corresponding graphics.
Yes, I agree, and would suggest considering that the images actually be simpler, more graphic. As I was putting in the chat, sometimes you can look at an image and somebody will see one thing and somebody else will see something else, and the image is intending to reflect one thing, but somebody chooses a different image because they see something else in it.
Yeah, we want the image, any of the graphic elements to help enhance the experience and not derail people. So we're very we want to be mindful of that and appreciate feedback on it from every perspective. Yeah, and Tyler, I think the especially when we were in the process of creating kind of a scenarios comparison graphic, so a scorecard is definitely something that we're in the works with, kind of summarizing how they all stack up against each other. All right, so we've gone a bit over, apologies for that. And we will see you tomorrow, speaking of report cards and metrics, and then can get more into the weeds. So hope to see you tomorrow. Thanks for your time today and all of your thoughtful comments. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you tomorrow at 2 p.m.